Hello and welcome to our BAFTA talk from breaking through from Young Game Designer to BAFTA winner. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Luke Hebblethwaite. I'm the head of games at BAFTA. And before we start, I just want to say a big thank you to Susan, Ali, and the rest of the Tandem team for what has been a fantastic Develop conference. And thank you guys so much for staying on at this time to hang out with us and find out what's going on here. As you may know, BAFTA is an arts charity, and we're here to celebrate the games, the creative and cultural importance of games as a medium. We're here to support talent at all levels within the games industry and to inspire not just the next generation, but everyone about the best the games and the games industry have to offer. And I can think of no better way in doing that than the talk we have here today, in which we will hear from the wonderful Alfie Wilkinson, who is our Young Game Designer winner from last year. Alfie submitted his game Egglien to the Young Game Designer Awards. It won. He was age 14. He's since then released it on Steam. It has also been now ported over to Switch, PlayStation and Xbox, and he's selling units in the thousands. What were you achieving when you were 15? That's quite impressive, right? He's going to give us a little talk about how that's gone and what inspired him to do it. After that, he'll be sitting down with John Ribbins, creative director of Roll7, who recently won Best British Game for Rollerdrome, and with BAFTA Breakthrough and lead designer at ustwo Games, Emily Brown. So that sounds pretty exciting to me, and with no further ado, I will leave you in the capable hands of Alfie Wilkinson.
Oh, wrong one. Hi there. My name is Alfie Wilkinson. I'm 15 years old, and I won an award at the BAFTA Young Game Designers competition last year. Today, I want to briefly go over how I made my start into making games, how I then entered my entry into the YGD competition, and then after that, I then turned it into a commercial, successful project that sold thousands of units on Steam and consoles. I've always been somewhat creative and a bit of a tech person. I was browsing the internet at a young age, playing video games at a young age, so the idea of technology has always been a big part of my life. So during lockdown, I'd say there was a big resurgence in indie game developers and in general, just get the games industry in general. So I thought, why not try and make a game myself? So I opened up a engine called Construct 3, and I started to get to work. So at first, it's just these little prototypes, you're a cube and maybe you're dodging diamonds or, just something basic like that. But I found a lot of beauty in these little games because they're abstract, but yet they have like incredible game design, and they're just the perfect things for something like mobile, for example. But yeah, I got more hooked on it over time, and I slowly got I slowly enjoyed making games. I found throughout this early stage and even today that I have this very high bar for myself, and I tend to scrap projects over and over and over again, and I can't really stick to something until I realize that it's perfect and this is ready for release. But I kind of found that limiting that scope and kind of making the size of my games maybe for a weekend or in a week, that kind of helps me get things out there, and it kind of helped me boost my confidence in releasing things. I got better over time. I was making more ambitious projects. I was starting to work in teams of all sizes, and I found I was able to put what I was good at forward, and they were able to put what they're good at forward, and we were kind of able to make a great team, and we were all doing kind of what we're best at. And I think that helped me kind of see that maybe I don't have to do this alone. Maybe there's other people out there that are doing the same thing I'm doing, and I think that kind of awakened the fact that this isn't just a one-person thing. This is a huge community of people that all love making games. I think at this point in time as well, I was struggling to release stuff because of school obligations. Again, I'm 15, I have GCSEs, I have homework, I have clubs, and I kind of found it was a case of managing some of that, maybe dropping a few clubs, maybe just managing my time a bit better. And I think that was quite hard to do at first, but I kind of accepted later on that game design is what I want to do, and that's the main thing. Also, I'm going to skip forward a little bit because I did forget to... yeah, here we are. So yeah, but I did decide in the end that this was the right decision for myself, and that this is what I wanted to do. Going forward a bit more, it's now the New Year's resolution New Year of 2022, and I made my resolution to publish a game for Steam. And I think this was a big goal for myself. I was only making games for about a year at that point, but I kind of thought to myself, you know, you only live once. I want to start building my career up, and I want to start making things. So I went to a convention in early 2022, and I met a young lad who'd become a finalist for YGD, and I was really inspired. He'd also released a game on Steam, and I thought maybe this is a good way to start. Maybe this is a good way to follow in his footsteps. So this is where the BAFTA comes in then. So I had about 2 weeks to enter, and it was quite a short time frame, maybe about 2 weeks. So I kind of tried to make a minimum viable product as soon as possible. Tried to run through the stages, you know, art, polish, sound, everything basically. I've always been. Oh, it's freezing. Oh, there we are. I've always been a big fan of addictive platformers, games like Super Meat Boy and Celeste, where you're dying over and over again, and there's this big rush to keep trying and trying to succeed in a level, and then when you do succeed, there's just this like massive rush of joy, and you want to keep playing and keep going. And I've always kind of enjoyed that game design because it almost kind of unleashes this like emotion in players, which I really quite like to see. Another game I was inspired by was Downwell. I quite enjoy dual purpose mechanics, so I kind of like the idea of shoot to move as a game idea. So I kind of wanted to take that into my game and kind of take the idea and push it up to 11 and really focus on the movement side of things, but also the shooting. A great game designer friend of mine once said, still well and still often, and I think I completely agree with that. I think a game that can put like a creative spin on something that's already made and really elevate it to new heights is like just as amazing as something that's been fresh out of the ground and freshly made, because I just think the originality is great, but being able to just innovate on something else is also really special. So yeah, the Egglien pitch is basically you're an alien and you fire eggs at enemies to kill them. That's the pitch really, yeah, but there's a lot of finesse, strategy and learning curves to the whole idea. So yeah, again, I spent 2 weeks making it, and it was a huge rush to the finish, trying to get all that game design perfect, trying to get the polish right. I think, again, I'm very like key on those core components, and I want to make sure they get right before I go any further on menus or anything like more deep into the development process. So yeah, I submitted about a day before the deadline, and I left the BAFTA there for a while. I decided to go back to Egglien, see if I could do more of it. Just thought, yeah, maybe just make a few more levels. You know, that's what I need. That's all I need to do really. But yeah, I sat down and worked. I made more content for a solid 2 months, and the game was done at that point. And all I need to do now was release it. And I got an email back from BAFTA. I was a finalist. I mean, amazing, really. It was just such a great feeling to know that, you know, I'd made it through and I was now involved, and I'd be attending this the BAFTA open day, open weekend. That was just like such an amazing feeling, just to know I was kind of like appreciated, I suppose. So I then went on and I developed the game more, got the store page ready, did the cover art, which you can see on the screen. And yeah, that was all really amazing, kind of just being able to see the game ready and going for Steam in a couple of months. And then there was a YouTube premiere for revealing the winners of Young Game Designers. I'm sitting down, I'm just thinking, there's so many great games here. The chances of me winning, you know, little to none. Then my name gets announced and I'm a winner. And it gets announced that I'm a winner. And that, again, is amazing, really, because I didn't realize that, you know, I was capable of that. I didn't realize I was capable of winning a competition I'd won in I just made in a couple of weeks. And that was just amazing to do. But yeah, it was a huge milestone. I had a release date for August, and then yeah, I think I was just on a real high at that point in my life and in my development, in my dev journey. And things started to settle down more in autumn. I decided to do something a bit more daring, something that, you know, it's never been done before really for someone my age, and I decided to release the game on consoles. I didn't think it, you know, it'd be possible. I thought, man, you know, publishers wouldn't want me, you know. It's not really something I can, you know, really do, you know, at my age. But I got in contact with the wonderful people at Penguin Pop Games, and I worked with them endlessly for a good 6 months to get it ported over. My engine constructory is not very good at porting games, so we've focused on making sure that the game was perfect for release and there was no bugs for the console version, and we managed to get that done. Ever since it released, it's sold units in the thousands, like Luke said. I think over 2,000 units now, which is great. It's been picked up by streamers and it's been on podcasts. It's been recognised as a really good fun, little platformer game to pick up on Steam for a few quid. And yeah, I think that's what I wanted to achieve with the game, and I'm glad I kind of hit that audience of retro gamers and people that are into kind of those kind of games that are die to retry. So yeah, I'm glad I hit my audience, and I'm glad people enjoyed what I was making. So I think overall that process of starting out as a hobbyist that didn't really know what to do, or didn't really think about my future too much, and I just thought I'm hopeless or whatever. I think what it's really done is just kind of let me meet so many great people. It's just helped me make my break into the industry, and now I'm kind of working full steam to just do what I do and become hopefully a great person that releases great games and a great team. So yeah, I don't know what's next for me now. I have a game in development, but as always, how it is, can't share yet. But yeah, I want to expand my game design further. I want to expand my skills further. I just want to prove to the world that, I can make great games. So before I finish this part of the presentation, I'm going to do a quick speed run of Egglien. Hopefully I can be good at this. I'm not too sure now. But yeah, we'll see you'll be able to see what I've made for myself. So I'll quickly go and get this launched up. Hopefully it does its thing. I don't know how many times I've done this install first world, but too many to count, honestly. Game testing is hard. Mechanic, I find if I can do bit of juice. I love how the bullets can actually protect the rocks, so essentially they can kill themselves if they dare wish to do that. There now. I'm in the zone. Something I do put a lot of effort into is like a special moments in the game for players. So I put a lot of effort into the boss fights because boss fights are meant to be cool. There's 5 total in the game, it's 5 worlds, so it's pretty feature complete. I think I'm now kind of ready to do the game, but lightning bolt. Yeah, amazing. So that's been Egglien. Thank you. I'll put it back to this one for now. So now we're going to switch over to the fireside chat with John and Emily. So thank you for being here, and let's switch over to that then. Oh, wrong side. Leave it like that for now.
For safety reasons, there isn't actually a fire for us to set aside.
Yeah, I wish there was a bit of a fire. There isn't. So John and Emily, if you want to introduce yourselves, we'll start with Emily.
Yep. Hey, I'm Emily Brown. The nice introduction from Luke. I work at ustwo Games. Worked on Alberta Wildlife Adventure, which was BAFTA nominated, which was quite exciting. And I'm a lead designer. I should say that. I'm a lead designer. Yes, that's me.
I'm John Ribbins. I'm co-founder and creative director at Roll7. And I've worked on Oli Oli and Laser League and Not a Hero and Roller Drone.
Amazing then. Does anyone want to start with any questions or?
I have a pre-planned question for you, Alfie.
Go on then, challenge me.
So I feel like listening to you talk and seeing your stuff, like I was doing similar stuff to you when I was 14.
Yeah.
I feel like it took until I was like 28 to stop starting games and start actually finishing games. And so when you went into Egglien, like how did you scope that to be a thing that you could actually finish? Like what was your approach to?
There was only one goal of Egglien, finish a game. And I think maybe it took a bit too much priority. I think I didn't really plan out much of the game itself, but I think I just had one simple goal for me. I wasn't worried about anything else, wasn't worried about people's expectations, wasn't worried about pricing, wasn't worried about anything until I released it, I think. Because at that point, once you say you've done it essentially. So yeah, I'd say that's kind of the process. Just focus on one simple task and get that task done.
How much did it change from the version you made in 2 weeks to the version that's like out on console?
I'll be honest, considering it was like a 2-month development window between the original and the finished version, a lot of it was content, but I did make sure to think about, player experience and accessibility and, what people would want to see in games essentially that, is finished compared to one that's been made in 2 weeks.
Nice. I have one more.
Go on then.
Which only sort of came in my head while we were watching the video of you playing through is like what were your influences? Because to me, watching it, it feels like you pay homage to a whole bunch of stuff that predates you by like 30 years. So like, how did you absorb that stuff?
I think from like, I don't know, so young. I mean, my dad's had like a, man cave of his own. So I've just been played around that for so many years now. So yeah, I've had access to, Mega Drive, SNES, NES, N64, Mega, Saturn, and all those kind of games, the Game Boy, major influence on Egglien. But I think having access to all those older games and also like the newer ones as well has kind of like helped me like diversify and also kind of add like a nice blend of modern and old gaming.
I think you were saying you started out prototyping as well. How did it change for you, like going from prototyping things to being co-founder of a studio?
It's really weird because Alpha made games in Construct 3, and I actually started out making games in Click Team Fusion, which I think they're very similar game making tools. We actually started, like Roll7 initially didn't make video games. It did like marketing campaigns and flash games for Facebook and stuff like that. We were chatting over lunch and I was saying like, that was the first point at which I ever like finished stuff. I'd always be like, it's going to be an MMORPG with like all of this things that are going to happen, and never finished anything. And it was actually only starting to work for other people and being like, you have 1 month and £5,000 to make a Facebook game or whatever, that would actually start thinking about like, what is a thing that you can finish in 4 weeks or however long you had to make it. So yeah, I think that was, as I said, that was like 28 when I actually started making games.
Yeah, I agree. I think deadlines help quite a lot. Like I said, I only had 2 weeks for the initial submission. So if it wasn't for that 2 weeks, if I spent like 3 months, until the deadline, I think I probably would have got a bit overwhelmed with content and, actually trying to make it finished and good and playable. Because again, I think that kind of shorter deadline kind of helps you compress those ideas into something that's formatable and, buildable in your time frame.
What was your route into games, Emily?
Sideways, because I did a psychology degree, and then ended up doing I was like, oh cool, I have a psychology degree, I'm gonna get a job. And it's like, no one's gonna give me a job. Okay, what do I do? And got really interested in the sort of blend of psychology and technology. So I was like, okay, well, human computer interaction is interesting, UX and usability. And so I went and studied some more. And on that journey, it was all about efficiency and effectiveness and task analysis. How does this task get done really fast, and how do you make it easier? And then after a day of lectures and so on, we'd go hang out in the coffee shop and we'd be talking about aesthetics and how does something beautiful, even if it's not usable, feel better than something that's really usable, and talking about how the iPhone felt so slick, but it was doing the same thing as other phones. What was the difference? And I just got sucked into thinking about oh, how do you design for fun? And how do you know if someone's having fun or not? And I just got really excited about wanting to make things that were fun. I was really interested in doing play testing. I was like, oh, how do you play test for fun? Do you just ask someone are you having fun right now? And they're like, why are you asking me? I'm just playing. And so I tried to find a job in that, and again, couldn't find anything. But did end up, so I got an email from a fellow student. It was the summer after the course had finished. I got an email saying, hey, I hear Sony are looking for people. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't have any experience. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know. And the day before the cutoff, I just sent my CV in and thought, oh, we'll see what happens. And I got an interview, and it just so happened they were starting to think about how UX fits in, but I got hired as a junior designer, and that was sort of the beginning of my journey.
Sideways.
Yeah.
Yeah, you went on about, finding the fun, and obviously that's a common usage in the industry, but I think something that not many people consider is actually what is fun, because that's a very subjective thing. And I wish more people kind of considered everyone has different kinds of fun, and yeah, I just think that's important to consider sometimes.
There's a mantra from Tom, who's one of the other fans of Roll7, of find the fun, find it fast, or make something else.
Yeah.
Because I think it's really easy to hide bad gameplay under lots of polish and juice and stuff like that. I think if the game is fun when it's you were saying, you're making stuff that's a cube and some diamonds. If you can have fun when it's a cube and diamonds, then
you can
everything else is only going to accentuate that.
Yeah.
We had some other stuff we chatted about. So I'm intrigued. What's your biggest lesson from making the things you've made so far?
Biggest lesson, I think for me, it's probably it's absolutely scope creep, because I think when you are starting out, it's only one person really, and I think again, it just becomes a bit overwhelming trying to deal with everything at once. And again, like I've said, I have a lot of obligations, so I have to think about that 100%, because I have a life to live at the end of the day. I'm a teenage life. So yeah, teenage life, baby.
You basically in crunch. Because I think about people who work in games and then go home and have their hobby project they work on in the evening. But you're at school and then you're making games in the evening. So when you had that 2 months, were you just solidly working on the game in all your free time?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think there was I think there was a spring period during that. So obviously I had a good 2 weeks to fully devote to it. But during that 2 months, I think it was very much working evenings. But I'm sure I was up till 2 o'clock in the morning sometimes. So, I don't think it was a healthy evening work habit, but I was kind of determined to release it, especially later on after I saw the game was actually starting to get more finished. I was like, just need to get out there now.
What's your biggest lesson?
Me, I think an interesting one is finding where you're happy. I've had a few conversations over the conference, people saying, oh yeah, I was working in this really small team, and it was really isolating, and now I'm in a bigger company and there's more people and I'm feeling much more happy. And I think throughout my journey on the way, finding working at Sony, lots of really big teams, but then I ended up working on quite small projects, working on we're going to do a little video, like TV service for PlayStation. What would the UI be for that? And it was like a really tight, small team. I'm like, oh, I kind of like this sort of fast, small team stuff. That's really interesting. And I think that's been a really important learning for me. And thinking about like, oh, do you like to be an engine most of your time, or are you more strategic? Are you like, do you want to manage people or do you not? And then sort of learning and trying all these things and feeling, where am I happiest? Where is my joy in terms of my creation? And also, what's really interesting is it will change. So like you might be like obsessed with being an engine, but then like want to do strategic things. And then you get into the strategic stuff. And you're like, actually, I don't want to be in. And you feel this tension between these two. It's like, it's okay to leave that behind and change. Or you might feel like, oh, I want to move into a lead role. And then you're doing it. And you're like, actually, this isn't me. I want to go back. And it's okay to do that. There isn't like one path to your success in games. But being flexible and listening to yourself, I think, has been a really interesting lesson.
Yeah, what about you, John?
I'm gonna pick the classic, I think, but don't crunch. Like, I know that's easier to say for an independent studio if you're working at another studio, but I think in the early days of Roll7, we didn't scope our projects properly. We didn't budget our projects properly, and that basically meant everyone crunched all the time. And we've been around, what, 15 years? At some point in that 15 years, all three founders have had some kind of mental health problem or had to take a long sabbatical out to like recover from spending too much time in games. And it's not worth it. Like, it's, as of 2019, we came back, we're like, we're not doing crunch anymore. People work flexible hours. And I think the best two games we've made are the two games we made when everyone wasn't working every hour of every day and tired and fed up. And I don't think you're a happy person. I don't think unhappy people make good games. And I think also, like, I feel like you have your best ideas when you're not actually sat at the computer, when you're off doing something else.
Yeah.
So if you don't take any time to go off and do something else, you can't see the wood for the trees. So yeah, don't crunch, don't do it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think recently I've had like a major burnout, and my burnouts have just been, just keep working, you know. That's probably the easiest way to get through it. And I think this kind of type of burnout was very much kind of like, I haven't played games in so long, and I've just been spending all my time developing. So it was almost kind of like I went back and like played some of the games I've enjoyed so much over the years, and I think that kind of like rejuvenated like my passion and my joy for making games.
I think when we were talking about these as well, I'd written down like we got a really good bit of advice early on from Graham Stothers at Devolver, who was like, before Ollie 1 came out, he was like, figure out what success looks like to you. He's like, mega commercial success is like a nice to have. Like, there are so many factors at play when a game comes out that it's hard to guarantee that will happen. And he's like, so why are you making this? Like, are you just happy to ship a thing to get it done? Or are you trying to build a community? Are you trying to improve your skills at the thing you're making? Really treating mega commercial success as like the nice to have at the end. If that happens, it's wonderful, but you should find other things that will make you happy about the process of making games, because there's no guarantee that will happen. I think has been a really good one for us as well.
I'm trying to think of one that we had. I quite like that risk one. What do you think is the biggest risk you've taken in your career so far, John?
Oh, geez. This is the one I just typed question marks into my notes. I think looking back, like, we've made a lot of very different games. Like Ollie is like a 2D side-scrolling skating game. Laser League was like a top-down multiplayer co-op sports game. Roller Drone's an insane Tony Hawk meets Doom thing. And I think a lot of people would say, like, pick a lane and stay in that lane. And like, you know, if you're going to make 2D platform retro games, just keep making those and get really, really good at it. And I think probably the biggest creative risk we've taken is to just make a lot of different games that we were excited about, like prototyping a lot of things and being like, this is really cool, we should work on this, as opposed to just picking a single lane. We might change what we're doing in the future and maybe pick a lane, but thus far, I'd say that's the biggest creative risk. What about you, Emily?
I had a really silly one. I was like, oh, when we were making Alba, this is really, really small. It's like a creative risk. We were making Alba, and about like some way through, we're making Alba for Apple Arcade. So it has to work on Apple TV. Apple TV has like no memory. And we were making a game with like a kid running around this Mediterranean island, taking pictures of all these animals. We're like, great, you're going to have all these pictures, you're going to take photos, you'll have your like library of photos. And we're like, okay, so Apple TV is not going to be able to do that. What do we do? And so we're like, we all come into a meeting and we're like, so we're making a game about photography, but maybe we don't have a camera. And we had this conversation about like, is it important to keep your photos? Is that the most important thing? Or is it that feeling of running around and taking photos? And like, okay, well, maybe we can still capture that feeling. And if people want to save stuff, then we can use the system level stuff of like save screenshot to gallery and not worry about having to do all that like sort of storage management stuff. And so essentially, I feel like I went to a meeting and we're like, should we not have photography in this photography game? And I was like, yeah, maybe we can do that. And we ended up with like, on your little in-game phone, it was like a scanner app. So it felt like photography. You were kind of doing the same thing. It felt like that same moment of capturing this picture, but without all the like baggage of having to save all your photos and stuff like that.
You were talking earlier as well, like you joining Alba was quite interesting because the game existed without necessarily the gameplay. Is that right?
Yeah, it was sort of like there was this beautiful demo of like exploring the space and like the art and the color and the theme and the tone of everything really felt like luscious. Mm-hmm. And I think as a team, what we had to do is seek like, what is the game? What game design allows the player to enjoy this freedom of movement, this beautiful place, this tone of just like, I don't know, if you've ever visited a Mediterranean island and it's sunset and you're like, God, this could last forever. We wanted to capture that. And I think the process was trying to find a game design that didn't get in the way of that. How do we make the player know, like, oh, I'm going to go do this next, or I'm going to wander off and just do this because I want to. And those things are all okay in this space, and sort of link up with the thematic like feeling of it. Yeah, that was an interesting challenge.
Was that similar for you?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think in terms of like system management and like trying to make sure everything works fine. Egglien Wild Fort is like a water level, and I wanted to have like almost like a flashlight effect. And I did because I didn't know how to like make water at the time. I made some pretty stupid decisions, a bit hackish, and the memory was exploding on my debug, and it was mad, right? So I'm just like, how can I simplify this into something that's like both, like consistent with the performance, yet also like communicates what I want to communicate to the player. So I ended up just making the whole water transparent, and I think it also I redesigned all the levels afterwards as well, because I kind of realized without the flashlight, it allows the levels to be a bit more open. You're able to see the enemies from a bit more visibly from afar, and it kind of allows you to be a bit more involved in the gameplay and be able to just snipe out enemies like you would in a normal level.
I think we went for lunch earlier, by the way. We like pre-had all of this conversation.
Yeah, the fish and chips were nice.
Vegan fish and chips.
Vegan fish and chips.
No fish were harmed in the making of the fish and chips. I think we ended up having an interesting chat about one of the last questions, right? Which is like, what would you make if you had unlimited resource and budget?
Start with Emily.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, this question was fun because I was like, ooh, what would I do? And I don't know if the expectation is like, I would make this game I've been thinking of these many years, and that's not really my answer. I think when I think about it, it's like, oh, okay. I think about like, oh, okay, how many people would I want to get together, and how big would the team be? And I was talking about my learnings of like really loving being on a small team and loving that dynamic kind of rapid process. So I think about like, what structures would I want to put in place? Like, okay, I want a small team. I want to give us like really clear goals. So like, okay, well, maybe we'll set ourselves like, okay, we're going to make a game in 6 months. And that's going to be our goal. And let's do it and get it out in 6 months and see what we learn. And thinking about like, okay, well, what are going to be our like values for how we work? And if you have infinite budget, then you're like, okay, well, we don't have to rush ourselves, but we have to give ourselves goals. And we can choose things like 4-day weeks without even thinking about it. And I think I reflect on those sort of structural things that mean it's a really happy place to be. And you can bring, like you were saying, when you were crunching, your team wasn't like happy and then the creativity is stifled. So how do you make this happy place where you can just come in, have a really good time making this thing, and be your best self, I guess, there.
We'll build the good structure and figure out the game once we have the good structure.
Yes,
Yes.
Kind of start with the structure. Yeah.
I think for me, I don't know a game in particular, but what I do know, I wouldn't want an endless team because that'd be hard to manage, and you know, everyone would be scrambling all over the place and there'd be no communication. But what I do know, I want it to be like a couple hours long, but every second is like this most amazing, fantastical dream, essentially, you know? Like it almost kind of, it's like short but sweet, but like, you know, elevated like times 100. So like you come out there and you're just dazed and amazed at like, what exactly is this thing, you know? I think that's kind of like the kind of thing I'd probably want to do with like unlimited resources.
So like a really small thing. That's
really small
really
thing
done.
that's just really, really well done and just amazingly well done, yeah. Cool. Yeah. John?
I was honest and said I don't think I'd ever finish anything if you gave me unlimited time and budget. I think I'd start loads and loads of really ambitious things and get nowhere. And I think, like you were saying, like I think weirdly, if you had unlimited time and you had unlimited budget, to get anything done, you'd immediately have to set yourself constraints again. Because I think stuff only happens when you're like, well, we're gonna, whatever, we'll have a vertical slice by this date, and we'll all sit down and play it together and see where we're at. I think if you just went, well, it doesn't matter, you can take as long as you want and spend as much as you want, you just keep changing things and changing the scope. So yeah, it would be great. There'd be no stress. Like like you're saying, like I think it would be initially going, cool, well, there's 4-day working week because it doesn't matter how long we take and we can do great stuff for all the team. And then immediately bring in a producer who could set some deadlines and like, make sure we actually keep ourselves honest and get things done.
Yeah. Again, I've always said if I started a team, like a full-on team, it'd definitely be like a case of like pay them more to work less, because I feel like there's a lot of unhealthy crunch culture and, you know, people being worked endlessly for these deadlines. So again, if I did have unlimited resources, there wouldn't be a deadline and people would just be able to enjoy themselves for as long as they want. And, you know, as long as we do make progress, I wouldn't be fussed. Yeah.
Do you want to grow a team?
I want to grow a team. I want to join other teams first to kind of like learn the trade, learn what it's like to work in a team. Then when I'm like comfortable and I know what I'm doing in terms of managing a team, yeah, I'd love to start like a proper team and make some stuff.
So there's one question in here that I have a no good answer to, but I'm intrigued. So what was your favorite project to work on so far in your time in the industry?
Oh man, it's a hard one because I can remember like when I first joined Sony, my first job, there was a project we were trying to start up, but it didn't really have a goal, so we were just like messing around. That was kind of fun. But the first game I worked on was like Operation Spy Toy. And it was like an iToy game, but you're a spy. And I was junior designer, so what I got to do is essentially work on the skydiving game.
Nice.
And I got to set, like, you had to fly through the rings and land safely at the bottom. And so just moving left to right to get through the rings. And I got to set up like the levels. So it's like, oh, I'm going to put the rings here. I'll make this one difficult. So the rings are going to be a bit, you know. And I think just my first experience, it was just so much fun to be able to do that. But I guess when we were talking about earlier, I was like, oh yeah. And then you think about the most recent game, and I'm like, oh, the Alba was so much fun because I got to see how those decisions we made play out at the end. Like when you're like, okay, we're not going to do a camera, we're going to do this scanner, and you play test it, like, is it working? Okay, we want this game to feel really joyful. We want people to go away and say like, oh, I played this game and I saw this bird and I saw this bird in my garden and I recognized it. And to be able to say those things in a meeting 2 years before you release and then release and have those things happen, like, I feel like that's a miracle. Like that's some kind of miracle has happened. And so maybe that is also my favorite experience.
I would say Egglien, but there's a game I made recently for a Ludum Dare called Paddy's Portage. It's like a bird, pigeon, box carrying game. A bit like a sneaky kind of spy mission as such, you know. You're trying to carry the box to the end of the level. But it was quite fun doing that because I think I made a team of 3, we're all remote. And I was learning so much in like a weekend, like, you know, like laser physics and all sorts of weird things. But I think it was really insightful to me because I don't get to work in teams too often. So I think being able to work on a large team with like some like really talented people as well, that was quite nice to do. And I think the final result for a weekend was great. And it was my first leading day where I like ranked top 100. So yeah, I was quite happy with that.
Nice. I wrote that we've done so many different projects that picking a favorite is like choosing between like tennis, France, and Jam. They're like kind of like you can't compare them. But yeah, I definitely think that like the last two games, like not being in crunch and like having flexible hours, and weirdly like they were both made in lockdown, so everyone was stuck inside, and it was very nice to almost have this like community. I don't know, there's a couple of Roll7 people here, so I'm looking around to see if they're like, yeah or no. But yeah, okay, cool. It was just nice to like be stuck indoors and everything was terrifying and like scary and were we ever going to leave the house again, but actually like coming on Slack and doing two projects that were actually like joyful, I think actually got a lot of us through 2020 to just see that thing come together. Yeah, to try and do things differently and make things less stressful and hardcore. And do it in a time where everything else was stressful and hardcore, but it still kind of worked out. So yeah, I think that'd be my fave.
You've got time for one more, so I'm just going to try and think of a good one. If anyone, you know, if you guys have a question, then go for it first. But I'm just trying to think.
What would be your one takeaway for people here? If you had your one bit of advice.
If I had my one bit of advice, I'd just kind of say, treasure the time you have sometimes, because I feel like the past year has gone so fast for me, and I feel like I've kind of gone from like a hobbyist to, you know, someone who's now starting to make my break into the industry. So I kind of think about where you are now, what you're working on, and just kind of think about how can I save this time with my team? How can I save this time working on this project that I enjoy working on? And, you know, once that product is out there, you know, just kind of save that time and the time you enjoyed having with your team and your friends and just the development process in general.
You're going to have to go first.
You want a bit of thinking time? Damn it, I did too. I guess from my point of view, right, so having come from like being a human in a bedroom who makes games on their own to like now where Roll7 has grown to is a really big team of people, I think mine would be to trust your team. Like it's quite difficult, I think, if you go from being like a bedroom indie dev to then starting a studio and having a lot of people working on a project to take your hands off the levers and trust other people to be very capable at operating those levers way better than you are, and just be there to kind of coach and direct people and kind of pull the thing together as opposed to jumping in and being like, oh no, I know what we're doing over here. Yeah, trust your team. They're probably better than you are.
Yeah, it's hard at first because it's like I've been, you know, ditched a few times while working in teams. So I think it's kind of like finding those people you trust and, you know, you enjoy working with. And like those are the kind of people, you know, you can trust really. So it's just kind of nice to work with people. Some go well, some don't. But it's just kind of nice to experiment and find out these people that are nice and are fun to work with. Yeah.
Okay. So I think for me, like I said, my journey was sort of through psychology and through UX. And I think sometimes I struggle with that feeling of like, oh, am I a game designer? Because I come with this like from a different perspective in a different world. And I guess wherever you come from, if you're making a game, you are a game developer, and be brave with that. Like, I think sometimes it means you might have a different perspective to other people. And sometimes that for me can feel like, oh, maybe I'm wrong because not everyone in the room is saying this. And you just have to say stuff and try stuff and you'll learn from it. And your perspective is valuable, whatever route it came from.
That is a nice one to end.
Yeah, it's a nice one. Yeah.
Good job, Emily. Do we have time for questions? No.
No. Oh,
no questions.
Oh no.
We go straight to the round of applause. So
Oh, okay.